The hum of the galactic war room was a constant, almost soothing, sound, an undercurrent to the tense silence that filled the massive chamber. Above, the domed ceiling projected holographic images of distant stars, each representing a different faction, a different power vying for control of the galaxy. But at the center of it all, in the dim light of the room, stood the most pivotal presence of all, Earth's chosen emissary, Captain Elias Vass. His uniform was a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings, his navy blue suit bearing the insignia of Earth's independence. Standing tall, his face unreadable, he felt the weight of countless eyes on him. Every faction in this room, each with their own ambitions and thirst for power, knew that Earth's decision would tip the balance of the galactic war. But Elias wasn't here to make that decision, not today. Earth was neutral, and he intended to keep it that way. The delegates of the Zenari Empire loomed before him, their representatives a sleek, almost intimidating display of dark, shimmering armor. At the head of the delegation sat High Lord Vzan, supreme commander of the Zenari Empire, seated upon a massive obsidian throne that seemed to absorb the light around him. His golden eyes burned with disdain as they fixed on Vass, a predator sizing up its prey. Behind him, General Rexer, the aging war veteran of over 2 centuries, stood with his arms crossed, his reptilian face weathered and hard like the battlefields he had commanded on. "Human!" Zan's voice cut through the room, low and dangerous. "You waste our time." Elias didn't flinch. He stood firm, his gaze unwavering. "We are here to negotiate," he said, his voice calm, betraying none of the tension he felt inside. Zan's lips curled into a cruel smirk. "Negotiate?" His voice rose slightly, almost a mockery. "No, no. We are here to issue a demand. Earth will choose a side, now." The room stirred. Delegates from the Coalition of Free Species, CFS, at the far end exchanged uneasy glances. They had hoped Earth would join their struggle against the Zenari, but Vass had not given them any reason to believe Earth would take a side. The weight of the moment pressed on everyone, even the CFS. Earth, an untested power, stood at the crossroads of galactic history. "Earth is independent," Vass responded firmly, his tone brokering no argument. "We will not involve ourselves in this war." Zan's golden eyes narrowed, his lips twisting in contempt. "You misunderstand your place, Captain. The Zenari Empire does not ask, we command." He leaned forward, his voice cold. "If Earth refuses, we will take what we need by force." A heavy silence settled in the room, thick with the tension of unspoken threats. The CFS representatives shifted nervously, some looking to Vass for a sign of weakness, others hoping for a sign of defiance. The Zenari were a force of unparalleled military might. This was not a war they could afford to lose, and the idea of Earth standing in the way was an inconvenience they could not allow. It was then that General Rexer stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. The old general's voice was measured, almost tired, as he spoke. "My lord," he began, his gaze turning to Vzan. "May I speak?" Vzan waved a hand dismissively, but Rexer ignored it, his sharp eyes shifting toward Captain Vass. "Human," he said, his voice quieter, but carrying the weight of years of battle. "I have seen your people, your history. You are a young species, untested in true war." He paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words. "Yet, something about you unsettles me." Vass raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a small smile. "I'll take that as a compliment, General," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Rexer ignored the sarcasm, turning back to Vzan. His deep, aged voice carried a note of caution. "My lord, we should reconsider. Humanity is an anomaly. They have survived every war their own kind has thrown at them. They adapt. They evolve. They do not surrender." Vzan sneered. "Are you suggesting we fear these primates?" His voice dripped with disdain. Rexer's gaze hardened. "I am suggesting caution. If we force them into war, they will fight without limits. They do not battle like us, with honor and protocol. They will not just seek victory. They will seek annihilation." Vzan laughed, a deep, mocking sound. "You overestimate them, General." Rex's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He turned back toward Vass, who stood silently, listening to the exchange carefully. Elias had read the reports about General Rexer. An undefeated strategist, a war veteran of over 2 centuries. If even he hesitated at the thought of fighting humanity, it meant something. But it was clear that Vzan would not listen. The Zenari Empire was too proud to back down. They had made their decision. Vzan rose from his throne, towering over the room like a giant. The atmosphere in the chamber grew heavier as the High Lord's voice rang out, full of finality. Earth will join us willingly, Vzan declared. Or by force. This is the will of the Zenari Empire. Vass met his gaze without flinching. His voice was steady. Then you'll be making the greatest mistake of your life. Vzan sneered, turning his back. With a flick of his hand, the Zenari delegation exited, leaving the room in stunned silence. The gravity of the moment lingered long after they were gone. Back aboard the UHSEIS, Vass stood on the bridge, staring out into the cold expanse of space. The doors hissed open behind him, and Commander Arya Kane stepped up beside him, her face etched with concern. How bad? She asked quietly. Vass exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. They're coming, he said grimly. Kane's expression faltered. An Earth? Vass turned toward her, his eyes hardening. We have 72 hours before the Zenari fleet arrives, he said. Initiate Protocol Ragnarok. Kane's eyes widened in shock. Are you sure? Send the message to Earth, Vass replied, his voice cold with finality. Now we prepare for war. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the UHSEIS as it drifted silently in orbit around Earth. Captain Elias Vass stood before the massive viewports of the bridge, his gaze fixed on the twinkling stars beyond, lost in thought. The hum of the ship's systems was the only sound that filled the silence, the calm before the storm that would soon arrive in full force. Earth, his home, was facing an invasion, and there was no room for mistakes. Captain! Commander Arya Kane's voice broke through his reverie, her sharp, focused tone pulling him back to the present. We've received the final fleet disposition from Earth Command. Everything is in place. Vass turned to face her, his expression unreadable. He had prepared for this moment for years, but now, as the threat loomed ever closer, it felt different. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders. He knew the Zenari would come, arrogant, determined, and underestimating humanity at every turn. And in their ignorance they would fall. Good, Vass said evenly, his voice calm despite the tension running beneath his skin. Initiate Phase 1. Let's make sure they understand who they're dealing with. Kane nodded, relaying the orders to the rest of the crew. The crew members on the bridge responded in unison, their faces a mixture of determination and unease. They were a team, but this would be unlike anything they had faced before. The Zenari fleet approaches. In the War Council chamber aboard the Zenari flagship Dominion, High Lord Vzan stood before a massive holographic map of Earth's solar system. His golden eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he gazed at the projected fleet of massive dreadnoughts and assault carriers, bristling with weapons and preparing to descend upon the planet below. The Zenari fleet had emerged from warp space without resistance, as expected. Earth's defenses were nothing compared to the might of the Zenari Empire. The humans had no planetary shields, no war fleets, only outdated kinetic weaponry. It would be a swift conquest. Begin planetary deployment, Vzan ordered, his voice cold and imperious. Capture key locations, subdue their resistance. Leave nothing to chance. General Rexer, standing silently at Vzan's side, watched the proceedings with growing unease. He had seen it all, conquests, battles, and victories, but something about this operation felt different. Earth had never been a threat in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Yet, he couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that humanity had something more up its sleeve. As the Zenari ships moved into formation, readying their assault, Rex's sharp gaze remained fixed on the hologram. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind him. General, one of his officers said, we are receiving reports from the ground. Earth's military forces are not responding in the manner we anticipated. Rex's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Earth's defenses, they've activated something, the officer replied, his voice tense. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. Rex's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face the officer. What are they doing? The officer's voice trembled with uncertainty. It's hard to say, General, but they seem to be preparing for something. Their systems are fully operational. Rex's mind raced. So, they'd been hiding something all along. Earth's hidden response. Back on Earth, deep within the Lunar Defense Facility, the hum of activity was frenetic as humanity's last line of defense kicked into motion. The command center, hidden in the moon's shadow, came to life as officers relayed orders, checked systems, and initiated Protocol Ragnarok. Captain Vass had been clear, no mercy. And humanity had planned for this moment. All systems are green, Captain, Lieutenant Harper said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of the situation. The EMP pulses are ready, orbital railgun platforms are in position, and our drone fleets are mobilized. Vass nodded, his expression unwavering. Phase 2, he ordered. Let them think this will be an easy victory. The clock was ticking down. Earth's primary defensive assets, once hidden beneath the surface of the moon and in the depths of underground bunkers, were now ready. Humanity's ingenuity would be tested like never before. The invasion begins. The Zenari fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, their colossal warships casting shadows over the blue planet below. Thousands of drop pods detached from the assault carriers, streaking toward the surface like meteors, their fiery trails lighting up the sky. On the ground, in New London, Captain Vass's voice crackled over the comms. Hold positions. No engagement until my command. Commander Kane, standing by his side, looked at him with concern. We're just going to let them land? For now, Vass replied, a slight smile tugging at his lips. Let them make the first mistake. As the drop pods descended, soldiers clad in Zenari armor began to deploy onto the streets, their weapons primed and their shields raised. They expected chaos, panic, resistance. But instead, there was only an eerie, almost oppressive silence. Forward sweep, the Zenari commander, Vecto, ordered. Secure the area. No survivors. The soldiers moved cautiously, their movements swift but calculated. There was no gunfire, no sounds of conflict. Only an unsettling quiet as they marched deeper into the heart of the city. The first blow. The silence shattered with an explosion. A Zenari soldier, unaware of the trap, stepped onto what appeared to be debris. A hidden mine detonated with deafening force, sending the soldier flying. The shockwave knocked 3 others off their feet. Ambush! Vecto shouted. His voice echoed through the chaos that erupted on the streets. Before he could react, a flash of light lit up the sky as electromagnetic railgun snipers, concealed in the upper levels of buildings, took precise shots. Zenari soldiers' energy shields flared to life in futile defense as the electromagnetic rounds tore through them, bypassing their advanced technology like paper. What is this? Vecto snarled as his troops scrambled, trying to regroup. From every hidden corner, Earth soldiers unleashed a torrent of counterattacks. Automated drones launched from concealed positions, EMP grenades shattered Zenari communications, and snipers picked off targets with lethal precision. The Zenari forces, expecting a swift conquest, were instead trapped in an urban jungle of Earth's making. The Zenari's weapons, designed for open-field warfare, were completely ineffective in the dense, unpredictable urban battleground that was New London. General, a Zenari officer called out from the battlefield. We are losing control. The humans are everywhere. Hold your ground. Vecto snapped, his eyes wild with frustration. But the tide had already turned. Humanity's counterattack, though unexpected, was merciless and efficient. The general's realization. Meanwhile, aboard the Zenari flagship Dominion, General Rexer stood silently, watching the live feed of the unfolding battle. His mind churned with uncertainty. The predictions, the projections, none of them had accounted for this. The humans weren't just surviving, they were fighting back with a cunning that seemed to defy all expectations. Rex's gaze narrowed as he realized the truth. They're prepared. In that moment, he understood what had happened. Earth's apparent neutrality hadn't been a weakness, it had been a strategy. Humanity had anticipated this moment, and now they were fighting with everything they had, using unconventional methods that the Zenari Empire couldn't comprehend. His voice, low and almost tired, reached the ears of his officers. "Prepare for Phase 2 of the counteroffensive," he murmured, knowing that the Zenari Empire was in for a fight unlike any they had ever experienced. The night sky above Earth shimmered with the glow of war. The Zenari fleet hovered in high orbit, their colossal ships bathed in the cold light of distant stars. On the surface, the battle raged, yet the quiet, eerie hum of the UHSEIS, as it remained hidden in the shadow of the moon, felt like a world apart from the chaos below. It was a fleeting moment of calm before the final strike. Captain Elias Vass stood on the command deck, staring at the holographic map of New London. The data streaming in was almost too much to process. Zenari forces were retreating in disarray, their command structures shattered, their soldiers trapped in a nightmarish maze of human ingenuity. "Status report." Vass's voice was steady, almost detached, as if the intensity of the situation had been replaced with a calm, almost surgical precision. "Reports from the field indicate complete chaos, Captain," Commander Arya Kane responded. Her face was grim, but there was no fear in her voice. "Our forces are driving the Zenari back at every front. Urban warfare units have secured the western sector. Sniper teams are pushing through their eastern flank, and automated drones are wreaking havoc on their supply lines." Vass nodded slowly. "Keep the pressure on. Phase 3 is in motion, correct?" Kane glanced at the tactical screen and nodded. "Phase 3 is set. Orbital railguns are online, and Phase 4 is prepped for launch. We can hit their command ships as soon as we have the go-ahead." Vass's eyes tightened as he observed the chaos unfolding on the ground. The Zenari had vastly underestimated the humans' ability to fight back. Earth's tactical advantage lay not in its military might, but in its ability to adapt, to fight smarter, not harder. The Zenari were overwhelmed, and soon, their entire fleet would know the true cost of underestimating humanity. The Zenari command fleet, a decisive move. Aboard the Dominion, High Lord Vzan stood at the head of the command table, his towering form casting a dark shadow over his advisors. His golden eyes were alight with fury, his claws tapping rhythmically against the stone table. Every projection on the holographic map in front of him showed disaster. His fleet was being torn apart, and his troops on the ground were being pushed back in ways he could never have predicted. "This is impossible," Vzan growled, his voice tight with frustration. "We should have crushed them. Their defenses were non-existent. What is happening?" He turned sharply, his eyes locking with General Rexer. Rexer, who had stood silently through the entire briefing, spoke at last, his voice calm but filled with a weary resignation. "My lord, we underestimated them. These humans, they do not fight like we do. They fight to win, not for honor, but for survival." Vzan's eyes flashed with anger. "They are nothing but a primitive species. They cannot stand against the might of the Zenari Empire." Rexer shook his head, a low sigh escaping his lips. "You believed their lack of advanced technology was weakness. But what you failed to see is that their greatest strength is their unpredictability, their adaptability. They've learned to fight dirty, to use the environment against us. This is not a war for them. This is an existential struggle." Zen slammed his fist onto the table, the holographic projections glitching from the impact. "Enough, General! We will destroy them. Prepare the fleet for orbital bombardment. If they wish to fight to the last, we will burn their cities to the ground. No mercy." Rexer stood unmoving, his face unreadable. "You do not understand, my lord. If we go through with this, we will lose everything. We have already stretched our forces thin, and the humans have only just begun to retaliate. Their strategies, their weapons, are not what we expected." Vzan's eyes narrowed, his golden gaze piercing. "You dare question me, Rexer? I will not let a species like this defy the Zenari Empire. For the first time, Rexer spoke not with respect, but with cold truth. The humans will not surrender, my lord. They will not break. And if you continue to underestimate them, it will be your empire that breaks, not theirs. The unthinkable, Earth's final move. Back on Earth, the situation was rapidly escalating. The Zenari had made their move, deploying orbital bombardment as the next phase of their conquest. High Lord Zen was confident, but humanity had one final card to play. The moon, Earth's silent sentinel, became the stage for humanity's ultimate counterattack. Captain, all systems are go, Kane announced, her voice steady. We've received confirmation from the Lunar Defense Network. Orbital railguns are locked, loaded, and ready to fire. Vass turned to the operations table, his gaze hardening as he observed the holographic projection of the Zenari fleet. They were about to make a fatal mistake. Humanity had never been in a position like this before, but Vass knew it was time to show the galaxy just how deadly they could be. Initiate Phase 4, Vass commanded. Take the shot. The counterattack, a battle in the skies. From deep within the craters of the moon, the first orbital railgun fired. The hypersonic projectile streaked through the void of space with unmatched speed, its target locked onto the Dominion, the flagship of the Zenari fleet. Incoming! A Zenari officer on the Dominion cried out, as the first shot connected with one of their warships. The explosion lit up space like a miniature supernova, and the shockwaves sent ripples through the Zenari fleet. The Zenari forces scrambled to react, their ships disoriented by the sudden assault. But Earth was relentless. A second railgun fired, striking another Zenari dreadnought, crippling it in seconds. The humans had found their rhythm, and they were fighting not with numbers, but with strategy, precision, and the ruthlessness of a species that had learned the hard way to survive. The Zenari fleet's collapse. On board the Dominion, panic set in as Zenari ships began to fall one by one. The bombardment from Earth's hidden railguns was devastating. As they scrambled to coordinate a counteroffensive, their fleet found itself in disarray. Activate all shields! Zan screamed, but it was too late. The humans had already outmaneuvered them. The Zenari Empire, so certain of its dominance, was now caught in a trap of their own making. General Rexer, standing at the back of the command room, observed the chaos unfolding. He felt no satisfaction in this victory. His thoughts were clouded by the knowledge that this battle, this loss, was inevitable. The Zenari Empire had been too prideful, too sure of its strength. They had failed to see what humanity could truly do when pushed to the brink. General, an officer called. We can no longer maintain control over the fleet. We are losing contact with half our ships. What should we do? Rexer turned away from the screen, his gaze focused on the distant stars beyond the ship's viewports. It's over. The final stand, Earth's message. Back on Earth, the dust of the battle was beginning to settle. The Zenari forces, broken and disorganized, began to retreat, their once mighty fleet reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Captain Vass stood at the center of the operations room, his face illuminated by the holographic map of the retreating enemy. Send a message to the Zenari fleet, Vass ordered. His voice, calm and resolute, resonated across the comms. Let them know the price of their mistake. A transmission went out across the galaxy, reaching every Zenari screen, including the Dominion. On every monitor, Captain Elias Vass's image appeared. His voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of the battle they had just won. You came to our world believing we were weak, he said, his tone firm. That we would break, that we would surrender. You were wrong. We are not the strongest species. We are not the oldest. But we are the deadliest. He paused, his eyes narrowing. If you come for us again, there will be no mercy. The transmission cut, leaving behind only silence. Epilogue: a galaxy changed. The Zenari Empire, once the mightiest force in the galaxy, now retreated in shame. Earth had shown them the cost of underestimating humanity. As the galaxy watched, they knew that humanity was no longer just a backwater planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. Earth had taken its place on the galactic stage. And if anyone doubted humanity's resolve, they had just learned a lesson they would never forget. For Earth, the war was over. But the message was clear. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. The silence in the War Council chamber aboard the Dominion was deafening. The once vibrant holographic maps of Earth's solar system, which had shown the zenith of the Zenari fleet's power, now flickered with fading lights as their warships burned in space, crippled by Earth's unexpected counterattack. High Lord Vzan, his expression twisted in fury, stood before the shattered remains of his command table, his golden eyes flickering with the reflection of the dying flames of his empire. His fingers, once poised in calculated arrogance, now trembled with the reality of defeat. How could this happen? Vzan spat, his voice raw with disbelief. General Rexer, standing a few paces away, offered no immediate answer. He had seen it coming, but now, watching the empire he had served for so long crumble, a sense of melancholy washed over him. The Zenari had been unprepared for humanity's fierce resistance, for the humans' uncanny ability to turn the tide when cornered. Their calculations had been wrong from the beginning. My lord, Rexer finally spoke, his voice calm but full of understanding. The Zenari Empire has been overconfident. You underestimated Earth in every possible way. Zan's golden eyes flashed with anger, but there was no force behind his words. You were supposed to be my most trusted general, Rexer. What is this, some kind of betrayal? Rexer's gaze remained steady, unshaken by the venom in Zan's tone. No, Zan. It's not betrayal. It's a warning. You were too blinded by your own superiority to see the truth. The humans, they are not like us. They don't fight for glory, they don't fight with honor. They fight because they have no other choice. And when you corner them, they fight with everything. Earth's victory, the aftermath. On Earth, the war was over, but the battle scars were evident. The skies above New London were clear now, the metallic wreckage of Zenari drop pods and warships littering the ground. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged victorious. Captain Elias Vass stood at the heart of Earth's military command center, his face grim as he watched the final reports come in. The battle had been won, but the cost had been high. Cities lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, the Zenari threat had been eradicated, and humanity had proved itself as a force to be reckoned with. We did it, Commander Arya Kane said, standing beside him, her voice filled with quiet pride. But Vass, ever the strategist, didn't allow himself the luxury of celebration. Not yet. This is just the beginning, Vass replied, his voice somber. The galaxy is watching us. We cannot afford to let down our guard. He turned toward the massive holographic map of the galaxy. The Zenari Empire had been defeated, but other forces were already stirring. The power vacuum left by the Zenari was significant, and soon, others would take notice. Start preparing for what comes next, Vass said. We need to establish Earth's position in the galaxy, not just as survivors, but as an equal. The Zenari fleet, the retreat. The remaining Zenari forces that had survived Earth's devastating counteroffensive limped back into deep space, their ships damaged beyond repair. They were no longer the proud conquerors they once were. Their empire was in disarray, its leadership fractured, its power shattered. On the bridge of the retreating flagship, Dominion, Zen stood at the viewport, his eyes locked on the distant stars. He was no longer the confident leader who had demanded Earth's submission. Instead, he was a broken ruler, cast aside by his own failures. General Rexer entered the room quietly, his eyes somber as he took in the sight of the defeated fleet. The Zenari had never known such loss, and now, they had to face the consequences. General, Zen said bitterly, turning to face him. You were right. We underestimated them. Earth, it was never about their technology, was it? Rexer shook his head. No, my lord. It was never about that. It was about their resolve. They fought for their survival. And in doing so, they shattered our empire. Vzan's claws flexed involuntarily as he stood in silence, absorbing the full weight of his failure. "What do we do now?" he asked, though there was no conviction in his voice. Rexer stepped forward, placing a hand on Zan's shoulder. "Now we rebuild. But not as conquerors. The galaxy has changed, and the Zenari Empire must change with it. If we are to survive, we must negotiate. We must seek peace, not domination." Zan's eyes narrowed, but this time, there was no anger, only resignation. "And if they refuse peace?" Rexer looked at him evenly. "Then we will be ready." The message to the galaxy. Back on Earth, Captain Vass sat alone in his quarters, watching a transmission that had just come in from the United Nations. The political leaders, representatives from the Coalition of Free Species, and even some former Zenari defectors had gathered to address the future of Earth. It was a delicate moment. Humanity had just been thrust into galactic prominence, but how they chose to wield this newfound power would define their future. Admiral Sheridan, head of Earth's defense forces, stood at the podium in front of a vast assembly of species. Her voice was firm and resolute as she addressed the galaxy. "We did not seek war," she began. "We did not seek to become conquerors. We only sought to defend our home. And in doing so, we have proven that Earth is not to be underestimated." The crowd watched in silence as her words echoed across the galaxy. "We will not follow in the footsteps of those who sought to dominate. We will not become tyrants. But know this, if you bring war to our doorstep again, you will not have the luxury of regret. Humanity will stand united, and we will defend ourselves at any cost." The transmission cut, leaving behind a sense of finality that sent a ripple through the galaxy. Earth had sent its message loud and clear. They were not a people to be pushed around, and they would not be easily controlled. The galactic shift, new alliances. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to shift. Former Zenari allies, now without a powerful empire to back them, looked to Earth for leadership. The Coalition of Free Species, though still wary of humanity's newfound power, began to seek diplomatic relations. Even some of the former Zenari leaders, recognizing the futility of continuing their conquest-driven ways, turned toward Earth in search of a more peaceful future. General Rexer, now leading the remnants of the Zenari forces, reached out to Earth's diplomats. The negotiation table was set, but it was a very different negotiation than what Zen had envisioned. Earth's position was clear: they would not be bullied, nor would they allow their planet to be threatened again. And so, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. Earth, once a distant, insignificant planet, now stood at the heart of galactic diplomacy. Captain Vass's earlier words echoed in his mind. "We are not the strongest. We are not the oldest. But we are the deadliest." Epilogue: A New Dawn. The Zenari Empire, once a galaxy-spanning power, had fallen, not through brute force, but through the realization that even the mightiest empires can be brought down by the unyielding will of those they thought too weak to matter. And so, Earth, a young species on the galactic stage, had proven that even the smallest could stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. They had faced their greatest threat and emerged victorious, not through sheer military might, but through strategy, innovation, and the undying resolve of a people who would never back down. As the stars above Earth's horizon stretched out into the infinite expanse of space, Captain Elias Vass stood once again on the bridge of the UHSEIS, gazing into the unknown. The war was over, but the real journey had just begun. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again.